In this video, we're going to be talking about 4.3. There we go. So make sure you have your notes open to that and you have it in front of you, writing down what I'm writing down, following along. If there's questions in the video, answering those questions. Okay, so 4.3, talking about equivalent ratios and ratio tables. Let's get started. Okay, so starting with our I can statement, we're gonna say that by the end of this, we can use equivalent ratios to fill ratio tables. To fill ratio tables. Okay. So, what does it mean for ratios to be equivalent? Equivalent ratios are ratios that describe the same relationship. Okay. So, if I can take one ratio, reduce it by the same amount, divide them both by 2, and get the other ratio, that would be an equivalent ratio. So let's say I have 5 to 15. I can reduce both of those by dividing by 5 and get the ratio. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 2. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So that means 5 to 15 and 1 to 3, those are equivalent. I changed both sides by the same amount. It's describing the same relationship. Let's do 10 to 10. I can divide both of those by 10 and get the ratio 1 to 1. So 10 to 10 and 1 to 1 are equivalent. I changed it by the same amount. Okay. As a fraction, if I have 1/3, I can multiply those both by 2 and get 2/6. So if I divide it by the same thing, or if I multiply it by the same thing, and you get the other one, those are equivalent. Okay. So we're going to check for a couple to see if they are equivalent. So what we're going to do is we are looking for ratios that are equivalent with 1 to 3. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the ratios. Okay, so when I divide 2 to 6 by 2, right, they share a factor of 2. Get 1 to 3. So since I reduced it and I got the same as 1 to 3, that works. So I get to circle that one. Okay. 3 to 3, I can divide both of those by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So that's 1 to 1. That's not the same as 1 to 3. So that one is not equivalent. Okay. 3 to 1. It's just 1 to 3 but flipped around. But they're not the same thing. It has to look exactly like 1 to 3. All right, let's try 4 to 12. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. I can divide those both by 4. So divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. That's the same. So I get to circle that one. Okay, I'm going to erase some of these extra writings. All right, let's talk about through multiplying, because that's another way as well. So if I take 1 to 3, I'm going to try to make it into 10. So I'm going to do times 10. 1 times 10 is 10. 3 times 10 is 30. Those work. Okay. Now I'm going to try, see if I can multiply 1 to 3 by something and get 5 to 15. Okay, 1 times 5 is 5, so that one works. 3 times 5 is 15, so I get to circle that one. Okay, let's try, my iPad is lagging, it doesn't normally do that. So let's try to get from 1 to 8. I'm going to multiply by 8. So if I multiply 1 by 8, I have to multiply 3 by 8. 3 times 8 is 24. That is not the same as 8 to 13, so that one does not work. Okay. So I'm going to take last one, 1 times 58. Then I have to take 3 times 58. Which is 174. That is not 48. That one does not work. That one is not equivalent. Okay. So, all the ones we circled are equivalent because we either reduced those and got to 1 to 3, or we can multiply 1 to 3 on both sides and get the other one. So if I can divide or multiply by something and make them equal each other, they are equivalent. Okay? Alright, so we're going to write two ratios that are equivalent with 1 to 7. So I'm going to do times 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 7 times 2 is 14. So since I multiplied both sides by the same number, you get an equivalent ratio. What if I did times 1/3? Well, 1 times 1/3 is 1/3. 7 times 1/3 is just 7/3. So even if they're fractions, they might be equivalent, okay? Gotta check. Alrighty, so ratio tables. A ratio table is a table that contains equivalent ratios. So they're all going to be equivalent. There's some sort of relationship between all of the ratios, okay? And it can be kind of tricky because you can do ratio tables multiple ways. I'm going to show you one way that I think is a little bit easier, kind of goes into our proportions and stuff we're going to do in a little bit, okay? But there's multiple ways to do it. Whichever way you see works best for you, that's fine. Okay, so here we have the number of trees represented by 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. And then this bottom row is the number of apples, okay? Now, I'm going to go by multiplying and dividing, okay? You can also do adding and subtracting, but sometimes that just is more difficult, not quite as easy to see, okay? So from 17 to 1 going up, I know that 17 divided by 17 equals 1, okay? I can also see that if I go the other way, I'm going to multiply by 17. Okay, so one way from 2 to 34, I'm multiplying by 17. The other way, 17 to 1 or 34 to 2, if I switch directions, I'm going to divide. So to fill in these blank spots, like right here, if I'm going down, I'm going to multiply by 17. So I'm going to take 3 times 17 is 51. So 3 trees will produce 51 apples. So to get from 5 to the box below it, I'm going to multiply by 17. It's 85. 7 times 17 is 119. Okay? So So the ratio of trees to apples produced is 1 to 17. Or you could pick 2 to 34. Right? Those are equivalent ratios. Any of them work. They're all describing the same thing. Okay? Alright, so for this box, miles traveled versus the number of hours traveled. Okay, to figure out the relationship, you can always try dividing. Okay? So take the top divided by the bottom, okay, or the bigger number divided by the smaller number. So 70 divided by 2 is 35. So my factor is going to be 35. So if I'm going down, it's going to be divided by 35, which means going up is going to be the opposite, which is multiply by 35. And let's double check that. I got 245, okay? So you can take the bigger number minus the smaller number to figure out what you're multiplying by. And I'll do another example of that on your homework page. Okay? So I'm going to take 35 divided by 35, which is 1. Then 105 divided by 35 will give me that box. So divide by 35 is 3. Okay, and then this last box, I have to go the opposite direction. So to go up, I'm going to multiply by 35. 8.5 times 35 is 297.5. Okay. This should say the ratio of miles to hours. So the ratio of miles to hours is 3 to 105. Or you could have picked 1 to 35. 245 to 7. Okay? Oh, I switched those around. Haha. Sorry. We do miles first. 105 miles to 3 hours. Okay? Right. Let's pop over and do one from the homework. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of the tables with you to show you that multiplying process again. Let's do level 1, problem 3. Let's do number 3. Okay? So, to find that ratio, I'm going to take the bigger number. Let's use 8 to 1. I'm going to take the bigger number divided by the smaller number. 8 divided by 1 is 8. So that's what I'm multiplying by to get from the smaller number to the bigger number. Okay? So I'm going to take 1 times 8 gives me 8. 3 times 8 is 24. So I double check that works. So to get the other one, 7 times 8 is 56. I don't know why. That one always messes up my mind. Then 9 times 8 is 72. Okay, so I take the bigger number divided by the smaller number is going to give me the relationship through multiplying. Okay, so 1 times 8 is 8. 3 times 8 is 24. So going from the top to the bottom, I'm multiplying by 8. Let's do a trickier one. Let's do, how about a fraction one? Okay. So to get from 2 to 1, to figure out that one, from 1 to 2, sorry. To get from 1 to 2, I'm going to take the bigger number 2, divided by the smaller number 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. So to get from the top row x to y, I'm going to multiply by 2. So to get from the top row to the bottom row, we multiply by 2. So I'm going to take 1/3 times 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3. So you get 2/3. Okay. So then 5/3 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 1 is 3. So you get 10/3. Okay, last one. 7/3 times 2. 7 times 2 is 14. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, so 14/3. So I take the bigger number, divided by the smaller number, tells me what I'm going to multiply by. Okay. Right. I'm just going to give you the factor, like what you're multiplying by on this one, and I'll let you figure it out on your own. So I'm going to take the bigger number, 1.5, divided by 0.5 is 3. So to get from the smaller number to the bigger number, we're going to multiply by 3. So to fill out this table, we're going to multiply by 3. Okay? Now remember that if you were to go the opposite way, if I was going to go to the bottom row to the top row, I would do the opposite operation, which is dividing by 3. Okay? So when you flip directions, flip operations. All right, good luck. You got this. Go team.